It takes a lot to get a permanent ban from the UFC. But for these 10 fighters, the door to the world's premier mixed martial arts promotion was forever closed on them due to some major controversy. And with that in mind, here's a closer look at 10 fighters who got banned from the UFC. As always, if you guys enjoy the video, please be sure to let us know by giving it a like and hitting that subscribe button so you don't miss any future uploads. Without further ado, let's get into it. Number 10, Wanderlei Silva. To kick things off, we have one of the most electric action fighters to ever do it. A man who was born to dish out punishment in the ring, cage, or octagon. Wanderlei Silva was so committed to the pain business that he even nicknamed himself the Axe Murderer, which, you gotta admit, has a certain ring to it. But after he failed to submit an application to fight Chael Sonnen in the state of Nevada and then refused to undergo a random drug test from the Athletic Commission, Wanderlei was handed a lifetime suspension from fighting in that state. He was basically stuck in his UFC contract, but unable to get licensed by any commission until the promotion eventually showed mercy and let him go 3 years later. Number 9. Rousimar Mammadov. 1 suspension from an anti-doping agency is bad. 2 is pretty terrible. And at this point, it becomes clear that something is up. But when you have 3 separate positive tests, you enter a special territory that Rousimar Mammadov lives in. Yes, that's right. This Dagestan prospect became the first fighter in UFC history to get a lifetime ban from USADA. 3 failed PED tests is enough to make it clear that there were no flukes involved. And sure enough, as far as cheaters go, Mammadov is quite possibly the most prolific in UFC history. Despite his unbeaten record in the UFC, when Ruslan got licensed to fight again in his home of Russia, things took a downward turn, and he is currently on a 2-fight losing streak. Number 8, War Machine. Jonathan Copenhaver, better known by his moniker War Machine, is without question one of the most infamous figures in all of MMA. Despite being a prospect at one point in time within the UFC, Copenhaver got himself banned from the promotion for making a series of highly disrespectful comments about Evan Tanner, a former champion who tragically died. But War Machine's biggest crime would come when he was jailed for violently assaulting his ex-girlfriend and her new partner in a truly brutal incident that landed him a life sentence in jail. It goes without saying that his MMA career is over, but you might be surprised to learn that he was banned long before his most famous crime. Number 7, Jason High. If there's one cardinal sin in the UFC that is bound to earn you a lifetime ban, it's getting physical with the ref. And after losing by way of TKO to the great Rafael dos Anjos, High was pretty annoyed with the stoppage. In fact, he was so annoyed that he proceeded to shove the official in protest. That, according to Dana White, was a major no-no. And despite the fact that he may have been concussed and slightly out of it, High was immediately banned for life from the UFC. He would actually go on to have a semi-decent run on the regional scene, but the door to the UFC was forever shut. Number 6, Cody East. This once promising heavyweight prospect's time in the UFC took a very dark turn when it emerged that he had earned himself a domestic assault arrest. At that point, he had come into the promotion through the Contender Series, but losses to Walt Harris and Curtis Blades made it clear that he wasn't ever going to go near a title. But when this domestic assault arrest was made public knowledge, it then emerged that he had a prior conviction for child abuse crimes. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is always going to get you a lifetime ban from the UFC. Cody East had virtually no fans after this revelation, and these days, he is more well known for losing to total nobodies on the regional scene. Number 5, Paul Daly. Remember how we already showed Jason High making the career-altering mistake of getting physical with a ref? Well, how about Paul Daly, who took that formula and cranked up the volume? After a tough fight against Josh Koscheck that saw the wrestler fake being hit with an illegal shot just to get Daly docked a point, Semtex ended up losing a decision on the scorecards. But instead of taking his loss on the chin, he decided to try and sucker punch Koscheck after the bell. Daly is a guy who is known for his thunderous power, and yet he couldn't land cleanly on Koscheck. So, what did he get? A lifetime ban from the UFC for a half-landed punch. One of the all-time great wastes of talent. Number 4, Rousimar Palarz. Rousimar Palarz was not only kicked out of the UFC, but this dude ended up getting blacklisted by the vast majority of MMA promoters out there. The reason? Well, this Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt and leg lock specialist has a habit of not letting go of submissions immediately after his opponent taps. I mean, seriously, this is almost like a running joke at this stage. If you sign on the dotted line to fight this guy, you'd better hope that he doesn't snatch an arm or a leg, because on several occasions now, Palarz has cranked on his opponent's limb. Nobody knows why he does it or whether he will ever stop, but at this stage, this proven dirty fighter is banned from any fighting promotion worth competing in. And we have to agree, he should not be allowed to continue. Number 3, Tito Ortiz. Want to know a great way to get kicked out of the UFC? Well, if you've had a long-running feud with Dana White, that's a good start. And for the former longtime UFC light heavyweight champion Tito Ortiz, the beef between him and Dana White was so intense that they very nearly ended up fighting in the boxing ring to settle. Dana, who used to be Tito's boxing coach, was confident that the wrestler wouldn't have the skill necessary to beat him, even now. But the fight never happened. During Tito's time as champ, it was no secret that Dana wanted him to lose. In fact, when Chuck Liddell finally did bring the Tito Ortiz era to its end, Dana actually asked him if he would give him the gloves used to TKO the Huntington Beach bad boy. White can be relied on, even now, to take shots at Tito anytime his name is mentioned in the media. And given just how poor Tito is at formulating sentences, Dana gets the better of him every time. Number 2, James Krauss. James Krauss is in an interesting spot within this list. As a well-respected former fighter who made a very successful transition into coaching, James Krauss was in a pretty good spot by the time 2022 came around. But his growing reputation as an MMA betting guru brought some very troubling information to light. When some late betting movement on a prelim fight featuring one of his fighters led the authorities to believe that Krauss had sent one of his guys into this bout injured, knowing he would lose, before then tipping off his Discord followers. This launched a major investigation into Krauss. Of course, Dana and the UFC immediately banned him, but they also promised to cut any fighter who continued to be associated with him. This case is ongoing, but as things stand, there is virtually no chance this man has anything to do with the UFC again. Gambling and MMA are two intrinsically linked entities, but anything that brings the legitimacy of the sport into question is always going to be dealt with quickly and effectively. Number 1, Matt Riddle. Matt Riddle might be familiar to any of you who have a decent knowledge of pro wrestling, but once upon a time, he was a talented MMA prospect who seemed destined to break into the title picture. The problem? Well, Riddle also enjoyed smoking marijuana from time to time. And after getting busted by anti-doping agencies twice in 3 fights, leading to 2 of his wins getting overturned, Dana White basically let this guy have it in the media, blasting him for being unprofessional and an addict to cannabis. At the time, Riddle was riding a 5-fight streak of wins and had spent his entire career in the UFC. But once White turned on him, that was that. Matt Riddle was cut from the UFC with no chance of a return. Thankfully, he managed to find a new lease of life as a pro wrestler, where he became a household name over the coming years. Still, we can't help but wonder how things might have turned out for him if he hadn't lost his chance at MMA glory. If you enjoy these battles as much as we like compiling them, please subscribe and hit the like button. Trust us, you'll want to know about all the crazy stuff that's going to happen next.